From darkness to light, from confinement to freedom. This is the Reentry Journey podcast with your host, Cardell Sims, bringing you the powerful stories of those who have walked through prison gates and built meaningful lives beyond them. These aren't just stories of survival. They're testimonies of transformation, second chances, and the human capacity for change. Join us as we explore the challenges, triumphs, and lessons learned on the reentry journey.
All right, man. We are back with another episode of the reentry journey. I know y'all be like, Cardell, man, you've been MIA, and we ain't seen you in a minute. Man, your boy been all around the world, man. I ain't even gonna fake with you. I've been all around the globe. Reentry conference. April was second chance month. Shout out to everybody who I ran across, who I got to meet in person during the second chance month at the NARP conference, at the NCIA conference, at the CEA conference, at the speaker showcase. I appreciate all the love, all the support, all the connections. And man, let's continue to work together and grow real big in this reentry field and continue to make an impact and making a movement. But outside of all of that, man, enough with all of that, man. Let's get to the podcast, man. We back, man. My guest today, I met my guest to a previous guest that was on here, and a brother of mine, Mr. Stephen Matthew Clark. If anybody doesn't know who Stephen Matthew Clark, you might have to go back through the podcast and catch his story, man. He got an interesting story, interesting moves that he's making from where he's at. He's a master connector, so he ended up connecting me with our guest today. And so let me get into a little bit about our guest today, Miss Shelley Winner. She is a former top Microsoft sales representative who left the corporate world to dedicate herself full-time to Winner Circle. And trust me, she is a winner. So her name, the winner, and what she's doing, it all goes together, man, and I love it. And Winner Circle is a company she founded to create pathways of opportunity for justice-involved individuals. As a passionate restorative justice advocate, Shelley is committed to reducing recidivism, breaking down barriers to employment, and advocating for the rights and dignities of those impacted by the criminal legal system. Drawing from her own lived experience, Shelley understands the challenges formerly incarcerated individuals face when re-entering the workforce. Her work is deeply personal and powerfully informed by overcoming systemic-based bias, which fuels her drive to educate companies with the hopes to transform their hiring practices and promote inclusive employment. She founded Winner Circles, an in-prison rehabilitative and vocational training program that equips incarcerated individuals with real-world business skills. Shelley's advocacy has reached national audience through her TED Talk and a feature role in a PBS documentary series where she shares her story of resilience and reintegration. She is a sought-after speaker and thought leader on topics such as fair chance hiring, restorative justice, and creating equity in the workplace. At the intersection of lived experience and leadership, Shelley's mission is clear: to build a future where every person has the opportunity to thrive regardless of their past. Welcome to the reentry journey, Miss Shelley Winners. Welcome to the reentry journey.
Thank you, Cardell. That was a mouthful, huh?
Oh yeah, man. I like for the audience to really understand through the bio when I introduce like who is the guest on the show, right?
Exactly.
I heard you share your story at the NARP conference where we officially met. I mean, we was
Yeah.
introduced on the email to Stephen, but where we officially met, and to sit back and listen to your story through your presentation, I was just like wow, right? So when listening to your journey from incarceration to becoming a top Microsoft sales representative, I felt like that was very remarkable to me. And like I told you, I love to hear the stories of formerly incarcerated people and their journey to success. And not only that, when they build programs, I like to help them and fight hard for them to get their programs on the inside, because I feel like we are the best educators for those on the inside because we've been through it. So I do want to ask, like, what was the pivotal moment for you that helped you redirect your past?
The pivotal moment.
redirect your path. But
Yeah.
in the process of that, kind of, you know what I'm saying, give us a little more about your journey from
Yeah.
your side and not me reading the bio.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in poverty. My father was in and out of prison majority of my life. He was an addict, a drug dealer, and so that was, heavy. He was very influential, even though he was not the best role model. I loved my dad, and we had a great relationship. But he did get me drunk for the first time when I was 11. And for a short period when I lived with him in high school, he was selling drugs from our home. So there were like people coming in and out at all hours of the night, right? And so I just was naturally attracted to people who like to party. And I then myself started experimenting with drugs at a young age. First it was alcohol, then weed, and then methamphetamine, cocaine, opiates, and then eventually heroin later on in my adult life. But yeah, growing up in that environment, statistically speaking, most children become a product of their environment. And my mom, although she wasn't an addict, she wasn't really present, I'd say, in my brother and mine and my brother's lives. She would, because they had us so young, I don't think she ever got to sow her wild oats. So she would drop us off at a family member's house, and we were pretty much unsupervised there. And so we did what we wanted. And I guess her addiction was her boyfriends, because my dad did put her through the ringer with his lifestyle. And so she would quickly try to move on and start dating somebody else. And so that was just my childhood. And so naturally, or eventually, I guess, I ended up becoming an addict myself. First, it was recreational use. And then by the time I was 25, I was using drugs every day, methamphetamine, and then I was addicted to opiates as well. And so all the way from 25 until 36, I think 36 is when I got arrested. I had been using and selling drugs. Now, I didn't start selling right away. I started selling later on. But I actually started trafficking drugs across state lines. And so I eventually got busted there was a confidential informant that they set up a sting operation. And I went and sold a couple ounces of methamphetamine to this confidential informant in a parking lot, which is like probably the number one place to do sting operations. I should have known better. So she was wired up. They were surrounded in unmarked cars, in various parking lots and down the street. And they had video, audio surveillance. And so I went and sold the drugs. And, what's interesting too is when the feds don't just arrest you right away, like the state would. They continue to let you break the law, and then they gather all the evidence of you breaking the law, and they bring it before a grand jury to get an indictment. And so although I had committed the act of selling the drugs to that confidential informant, and they had me, they did not arrest me at that time. They just used that evidence, and then they got the indictment. And it was about 2 or 3 months later that the feds came kicking down my door to arrest me.
Yeah, they'll let you build the case.
Oh, yeah.
Case up on yourself. Get you more relevant conduct.
Oh yeah. What's crazy is they were following me around too, and I knew they were watching me. So it's crazy. I lived in North Dakota, which is a very rural state. They have maybe about 1 million people in the entire state, right? So, and they don't have any like big cities. So they have all these little small towns. And I lived in this town called Dickinson, North Dakota. And so when you're, running and gunning and doing crazy shit and selling drugs, you stick out like a sore thumb, right?
Yeah, and I most
Yeah.
definitely in North Dakota. What's going on up there?
Oh my God. So I moved out there because of the oil boom. I was living in Louisiana with my ex-fiance at the time, and he started cheating on me with another woman, and he had actually relapsed. We moved to Louisiana to get clean, and he relapsed, started dating the drug dealer's sister, and so at that point, I knew it was over. So I called my best friend, told her I wanted to leave him. And she told me about North Dakota because during this time, there was an oil boom going on there. I don't know if you remember that, but it was off the hook.
No.
Yeah. So they
Yeah,
learned.
I ain't know nothing about no North Dakota. I don't think I knew nobody from no North Dakota.
Yeah. Back in the day, they learned this new technology called fracking. And they would shoot this substance into the ground, and it would create all these cracks in the ground, and then it would produce all this oil. It would open up, paths for oil. And so everybody flocked to North Dakota. I mean, that was the place to be. People, no college degrees, working for the oil companies, right? Making 6 figures. And they had so many people flock to the state to make money that they started setting up. They didn't have enough housing for everybody. So they started setting up these things called man camps, where they would put like a bunch of trailers and bunk beds in these trailers to house all the workers. And in North Dakota, there's nothing to do except drink. And drugs are even hard to find. That's why I started bringing drugs into North Dakota, because I couldn't, if you did find drugs, it was, it was cut with God knows who, with what, you know what I mean? But, and I just wasn't willing to risk doing some drugs cut with some crazy stuff. So that's why I started trafficking. But anyway, so she told me about North Dakota, and I had been a bartender for, I don't know, I'd say about 6 or 7 years of my life. And she said, you know what, you should go out there and start bartending, because all those man camps, the bars there are packed, and the bartenders are making like $1,000 a night in tips. And I was like, hell yeah, sign me up. So I started looking online for a bartending job, found one, called the number, talked to the owner. He basically hired me, packed up all my stuff in my little Honda, and I left.
North Dakota.
North Dakota, dude.
And you said it was called fracking?
Fracking. Yeah.
Fracking.
Yeah.
And so when they was drilling, I don't know, I'm just thinking about this. When they were drilling creating the cracks for the oil, did the cracks kind of look like blood vessels in a sense, or like if you look at a leaf? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can see why they call it fracking now.
Yeah.
I can see why they call it fracking now. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So up to this prison and one thing, everything that you was going through up to you went to prison, and even when you get to prison, is that what you call the losing loop? I know in the title of the episode it talks about, what I'm saying, the losing loop. So is that what the losing loop looked like?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of it, right? So the losing loop is really just the cycle of trauma, incarceration, abuse, whatever, right? That's just passed down from generation to generation. And people just continue that path because they don't know any better. That's all they've been taught. And really the only way to break that cycle is to learn a different way of life. And so that starts with like becoming self-aware, developing your emotional intelligence, doing personal development, things like that. And that's what really will allow you to break that losing loop cycle, because it really is a losing loop. It doesn't set anybody up for success. And, for me, after my arrest, I found out I was pregnant. And for me, I knew I didn't want to be the same type of parent to my son that my father was to me, and that I had to figure out a different way to live. I had to figure out a different way to think, because what I had been taught I knew wasn't the right way. And clearly, here I am sitting in prison. and reflecting on my life. And I had just given birth to my son. And you know what, though? I'm so glad I got arrested, Cardell, because I honestly don't know if my son would be here today had I not got arrested. I like to think that, I would have quit drugs, but I was in so deep in my addiction, and it would have been really hard to get off of drugs. And so it was like, I got pregnant, and I swear within like 2 weeks, I got arrested. And so, and it was it was one of the biggest blessings of my life. I am very grateful for my incarceration, because it saved my life and it saved my son's life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it like being incarcerated and pregnant?
What was it like to be incarcerated and where?
And pregnant.
And pregnant? Oh no. So I got arrested and then they ended up letting me out on pretrial, and they put me in a halfway house in North Dakota, and it was awful. Ugh. I mean, I guess it's better than jail, right? But the jail, that's a whole another story. Here I am withdrawing off opiates and heroin. Didn't know I was pregnant. I was probably 118 pounds soaking wet, just going through it. And then 2 weeks later, they tell me, okay, we're gonna take you out of jail. We'll let you stay in this halfway house. So they put me in this ghetto halfway house, and like everybody was using there. And I eventually used at one point, and then I just knew, I was like, I got to get out of this halfway house. So my friend, a girl that was there at the halfway house, told me about this treatment center that was right down the street. It was called Adult and Teen Challenge, and it was a faith-based treatment program. And she said it's a wonderful program, and that I should consider maybe applying to go into that program. So I talked to my probation officer about it, and she told me, hell no, that I'm not gonna be, she's not going to allow it. So I was really stressed out because I knew I was doomed if I stayed at that halfway house. Because I would have,
yeah. But you're gonna allow me to stay in this place, huh?
Exactly, dude. I used to, even though I'd gotten through the withdrawals, the cravings for the drugs did not go away. I mean, I would have the most vivid dreams and then wake up just wanting so badly to get high, right? And here I am around a bunch of people still using. So it was a horrible environment to be in, nonetheless. But so here's what I did. So my probation officer tells me no. So I call my dad. This is the irony of it all. I call my dad and I'm like, Dad, listen, I want to get into this drug treatment program, but I need you to go on their website, print the application. It's about eight or 9 pages, mail it to me. But when you mail it to me, because they check all your mail, put an oxycodone in the middle of the pages, wrapped up in some foil. And oxycodone is only about that big, very small blue pill, right? Because my dad was, did drugs too. And so he did. He printed out the pages to this rehab and put a pill in the middle of the pages because they wouldn't be able to see it. It wasn't big enough for them to really notice. Mm-hmm. I got the packet. I grabbed the pill. I undid the foil because I used to smoke the pills. I grabbed a pen. I took it apart and I went into the bathroom and put my feet up on the toilet, closed the stall door, and got high the very last time. And then I filled out the application. I sent it off, and I ended up getting accepted. And I told my lawyer about it. And I said, hey, listen, I got accepted to the program, but my PO won't let me go. And he's like, oh man, Shelley, he's like, listen, the judge is going to side with your PO. So if she says no, the judge is going to say no.
Right.
Well, my PO finds out I applied behind her back. So she shows up at the halfway house and she's pissed. She's like, I told you not that you cannot go into this program, and you went behind my back and went ahead and applied for it. So what's going on in your head? Like, why would you do that? And I just looked at her. I almost broke down in tears. And I just said, I am really struggling mentally. Like, if I don't get out of this halfway house, I am going to use, and I don't want to go back to prison. I don't want to do this to my child. I'm done. You've got to get me out of here. Please, I'm begging you to help me. And you could tell as soon as I told her that, she knew I needed to go into this program. And so she said, okay, all right, I'll put you in, I'll approve this. But if you screw up, I'm taking you out. All right. And I said, you won't hear a word from me. Everything's going to be fine. Thank you so much. And then like a week later, the executive director came and picked me up from the halfway house. And I was just like, oh, thank God I'm out of here, you know, and went and started my journey in the program, my journey of healing mentally, physically, spiritually. Boy, that was a roller coaster ride too. You know, because
I'm just gonna ask, from that, how did you find your way to the winner's circle?
To the winner's circle. Well, the winner's circle came
I'm talking about from
from
that.
the losing
From
loop to
that.
the winner's circle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
from the
So
loop,
it
yeah.
started. Me stepping into the winner's circle was the moment I decided to get myself into treatment and to stop this cycle.
Okay.
And so it was at that moment. Now, I didn't enter into treatment, you know, with a positive mindset, right? I entered into prison kicking and screaming and fighting because my demons didn't want to let go of me, you know? And so that whole journey, even though I was stepping into the winner's circle at that moment, I didn't still feel like it.
Right.
I hated all the girls there. I was so negative. I was just like, everything they did just pissed me off. I mean, and I almost got into a fist fight with one of the girls. And it was interesting because I didn't fully step into the winner's circle, even though I'd started my journey of recovery, because I was still doing dumb shit, like trying to get in fist fights while I'm 8 months, you know, or 7 months, 6 months pregnant. Right. So I almost get into this fist fight, and the executive director calls my probation officer. And my probation officer comes down and I'm like, dude, I'm done. I'm going back to prison. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, like I just literally screwed up my life. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell's wrong with me? Why do I keep acting like this? Why do I keep making these stupid decisions? Well, that's because that was the way my brain was wired. That's all I knew. But I knew I wanted to change. I just didn't know how. And so my probation officer comes in, they put me in one of the offices. I'm sitting there by myself, and in walks my probation officer. And she just looks at me and she's like, what the hell are you doing? I'm taking you back to the jail. You're going to sit in that cell with, 20 other women and until you're sentenced. And when you give birth to your son, I'm going to make sure you never see him again, because you clearly are not getting it. You told me if I approved you to come to this program that I wouldn't hear another peep out of you. And here I am getting ready to arrest you.
Yeah, she finna go ahead and lay you down. She done had enough.
Yeah. I mean, I started bawling, dude. There's like, especially when she said, she'll make sure I never see my son again. Now, I don't know if she had the power to do that or not at that time, but I didn't care. I didn't
want to find out.
I didn't want to find out. Yeah. So I begged her to give me another chance. And she says, well, it's not up to me, Shelley. It's up to the executive director. And I'll go talk to her and see if they'd be willing to give you another chance. But if they don't, I'm sorry, you're going back to jail. And so she left the room, and let me tell you, I never prayed so hard in my life, asking God for a second chance. Just and it was maybe about, I don't know, 5 to 7 minutes while she was gone talking to the executive director, and my heart's pounding out of my chest. I'm sweating, I'm crying, I'm praying. And she comes back in, and I'm just like, oh God, please let her, please let me stay, And she says, all right, Shelley, they're going to give you another chance. But if I hear one more peep, I swear you are going back to jail and you're never going to see your son again. And that was a huge turning point for me, because I realized the consequences of having the, acting like this, right? And I didn't want to keep doing it anymore. I didn't want to keep repeating this behavior. And so that was the moment of surrender for me, where I fully let go and let God. And I went up to my room, I dropped to my knees, and I started crying and just asking God for forgiveness, and that he could, if he would change my heart, because I didn't know how, and that I was ready to, let him lead my life. And I'll tell you what, it wasn't like overnight, boom, I was changed. But the very next morning, I felt lighter. I felt like there was like a weight that had been on my chest was lifted a little bit. And the way that I started viewing the women in the program, because remember before, I was very negative. And so I focused on every negative thing about every individual in that program with me. But then once I asked God to take that negativity away, it was so supernatural. Now I started noticing all their beauty and the things that I loved about them, because we have choices in life, which mindset we want to have. We could be negative or we can be positive, right? There's both perspectives to choose, and we get to choose which one we want. And I was like, I'm done with the negative. I want to choose positive. Help me choose positive. And he did. And so I started noticing all the beautiful things about them, and I really started to grow and love all of the women. And so because I changed my attitude, it changed every single relationship with all the women there in that program. All the girls that hated me, even the ones I tried to fight, or the one I tried to fight, right? We all became such good friends. And I still, to this day, I'm connected with all of them on Facebook, and they all hold a special place in my heart. And we check in with one another. And I'm just so grateful that I had that experience. And so I was in that program about 6 months, and I ended up giving birth while I was still in the treatment program. And I gave birth to my son. His name is Emmanuel Jace Winner, but he goes by Jace. And I gave birth to him October 1st, 2014. And I got to spend roughly about 3 weeks with him all together. And my mom was very supportive. She came up to be with me during this time. And then I turned myself in December 1st, 2014. Yeah.
I don't know how you did it, but turning yourself.
Dude, it was so hard. It was so hard. But you know what? If it wasn't for my mom coming to get my son, I probably would have been so stressed out in prison. I just knew he was safe. I knew he was cared for. And it just felt, it gave me that peace to go into prison and, do what I needed to do to get, to hurry up and get out and just finish my sentence. Right. And I was so fortunate, Cardell. I'm telling you, like, when it comes to the feds, when you get sentenced, they don't tell you what prison they're going to send you to, because they have prisons all over the United States. So they basically, it's like, I feel as if they draw a prison name out of a hat, and they're like, okay, you're going to this prison,
No, they ain't asked you any suggestion any prisons.
No,
For us, because they try to find prisons within a 500-mile radius of where they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Find within 500-mile radius, so just in case you found, at least you have a chance to go. So like we go through basically the diagnostic of the feds, which was CCA back then. When we went to CCA, that's where they diagnosed where you gonna go. And then they asked you, okay, is there any prisons that you want to go to? Like where I'm from, Kansas City, Leavenworth is our backyard, Leavenworth, Kansas. They remember like 30 minutes. So
Right.
I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go to Leavenworth. But it could have been Leavenworth. A lot of times it'd be Oklahoma, or it might be Arkansas, Forest City, Arkansas. Or
Mm.
sometimes they might go to Illinois, somewhere around the states that circle around Missouri, because Missouri, we don't have no federal prison. Well, we got one, Springfield, but it's a medical, kind of like a medical place. But
Yeah.
I thought they didn't ask y'all. Yeah, they asked us.
Yeah, no. Yeah. So what had happened is I found out there was a federal women's prison in California in the Bay Area. So, the judge knew I'd just given birth because I brought my son with me to the court to my sentencing date, my mom and my baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he ends up sentencing me, and I asked him if I could go to this women's prison in the Bay Area because it was close to my family and I'd be able to see my son. Well, judges don't usually, rarely ever, if at all, grant that, right? And he did. He allowed me to go into this prison, and everybody I told, I remember, was like shocked. Like, what? You got to pick the prison? I was like it's
Right.
God. I don't know. So I ended up going to that prison, and let me tell you, like, I started doing a lot of research before and looking up this prison, and they did a documentary, and it was voted one of the #1 prisons in the world.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It was like Prisony land.
Oh no. Did you turn yourself in at the prison?
No. So
Okay.
because I was in North Dakota, I did a bunch of traveling. I think I was about a month and a half in transit going
Wow.
from place to place. And then I had to ride Con Air.
Yeah.
That was crazy, dude.
You was taped up?
Yeah, so we had the handcuffs on, but then there was this black box that
Oh
so like
yeah.
you couldn't move your arms, or your hands because the box.
Missouri inmate made that box.
Really?
Yeah.
Traitor.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. You gotta ride like this. Yeah, he made that back. Man, this is how long I've been doing prison time. He made that back in like, man, 05, 06, so yeah.
That sucks
Yeah.
that a
Sold it. I
former inmate
always
did
say he
that.
sold his soul for a jelly roll, man. He sold his soul for a jelly roll.
I know, right?
Out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then they had us. So I think I went from North Dakota to another jail in North Dakota that only houses federal people, and then from that I went to, I want to say, Oklahoma, and then I was in a jail there for 2 weeks, and then that's where we waited. It was in that jail where I waited for Con Air to come get me. And I'll never forget that moment. Just I'm shackled up, feet, hands. I've got that black box on me. The plane's in front of me, and I'm just like, what? I can't believe I'm walking onto this airplane right now. Yeah. It was a wild experience. And then they flew me to Pahrump in Nevada. And so I had to spend, I think it was about a week or week and a half at Pahrump. And then what happens is from Pahrump, Nevada, you get on a bus and then you drive, I don't know how many hours it was, on these metal hard seats, but they drove me from Pahrump all the way to Dublin. So everybody that was going to Dublin, we all got on the same bus. And then they would shackle, I think they shackled us together, like two in pairs. That was wild. I think, I can't even remember how long of a drive it was, but it was like over 10 hours. And by the time we got to the prison, I mean, we were just so exhausted and ready to go to bed. And so we're in intake and we're going through the metal detector and, giving them our property, and they give us our bedding. And at this point, I hadn't seen, the compound, the prison yard yet. I'm thinking it's just going to be, dark, dirt, fences, razor wire, right? Well, because when all the research I was doing on the prison, even though it said it was one of the best prisons, it never showed me like the inside of it, right? So I just
they ain't gonna never show no inside.
Right, exactly. So so finally they assign us to our housing units, and so we're walking out of the office. We walk onto the yard, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, holy shit. There's freaking birds and bees and flowers and green grass. And I mean, it was pretty, yeah. And you couldn't see any of the razor wire because the way the prison was set up, the fencing was all around the housing. So it wasn't like right there in your face. You couldn't really see it. And it just looked like I was in this little mini world. And I remember walking by, it was about 5 p.m. and I walked by their gymnasium and they had hip hop music playing. It was where they had indoor and outdoor gym. They had a track. They had basketball court. I mean, it was like, what the hell? And there were people doing aerobics and stuff inside the gym. And it really put me at ease. I was like, okay, this is weird, but if this is what my experience is going to be like in prison, I can handle this.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then not only that, like, oh yeah. And then I walk into my housing unit and there's no cells. There's wooden doors. Each cell had a wooden door with a handle and a window. And then we had windows in our cells as well that we could open up and let fresh air in. We had curtains on the windows. Like, it is crazy.
Oh yeah, that was nice. That was top of the top.
Exactly.
I see why it was number one.
Yeah. And not only that, but it was flooded with volunteers bringing in so many programs. So I just spent my entire time prison just programming and learning different way of life and learning new ways of thinking, learning new concepts, getting new tools. And I was very productive in prison. I knew this was like the incubation period. This was my time to really have no distractions and to really just focus on my rehabilitation. And so I wasn't going to waste my time doing drugs or playing cards or watching TV all day. Like I really wanted to get what I could out of this experience and use it to better my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
And during that time, during that 5 years of incarceration, was there a particular skill or mindset that you developed that unexpectedly became valuable in your professional life?
100%. So there was this program I did called Defy Ventures. And, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Is this correctional officer, who is now a good friend of mine that worked at Dublin, was the one who would bring in all these amazing programs. And so I had never gone through an entrepreneurship program before. But during this program, I learned how to, basically start a business. Then I had to come up with my business pitch. And then I got to be involved with a pitch competition. So basically a Shark Tank event that they had at the prison, which was the first time I'd ever gotten up and, done something like that, where they brought in, I don't know, it was like 50 executives and CEOs and, all these prominent people, right, are coming in to judge me. I was so nervous. But one of the skills that it taught me was about self-limiting beliefs and self-limiting thoughts, right? And and how fear will hold us back in life. It's one of the biggest reasons why people never achieve their true potentials, because they let those beliefs and those fears hold them back. And I remember Catherine Hoke, she was the CEO at the time. And so she would record videos and she would mail in the DVDs, and then we'd watch the DVDs. So it was the night before the pitch competition. And I was thinking of all kinds of ways that I could fake like I was sick. I did not want to go do it. I was so nervous. And then she filmed a video and she sent it in, and it was exactly what I needed to hear. And she said, listen, I know you guys are scared right now, but you've worked so hard. Please show up tomorrow, give your pitch. Everyone that's coming to be the judges are there rooting for you. They want you to succeed, and do it for yourself, right? And, her just sending that message, coupled with the training that I had done on challenging your self-limiting beliefs, I was like, okay, I'm going to show up. And so learning about fear in that capacity is what really changed it. Well, let me back up. So I show up to the Shark Tank pitch, and I'm not thinking I'm going to win it all, but I'm like, just get through this. Like, I know my limiting beliefs are popping in, but it'll be fine. Just get through it and just be proud of yourself, right? No one's going to die. I end up winning the competition, dude.
Mm.
And so after that moment, that's when I really, truly realized the power of fear, and how if you can learn to challenge those fears and those limiting beliefs, there's nothing that you can't accomplish. And that is what led to me battling it out with Microsoft and achieving the success I achieved at that company. Because I'm telling you right now, had I not had that training, I would have tucked my tail between my legs and ran and walked away.
Right. And so let's talk about the battle of Microsoft.
Yeah.
Some people gonna want to know, like, how did you come out of prison and get a job at Microsoft, right?
Oh God, I hope everyone's sitting down. Okay, so I always had an affinity for technology. I loved computers. So I got my first computer when I was 23, and I learned how to fix computers. And so what I didn't tell you earlier was when I was in North Dakota, I mentioned it was a very rural state, right? So we didn't even have a dry cleaner, let alone a computer repair business there. So I ended up starting a computer repair business while I was in North Dakota, which was my side hustle to drug dealing. But anyways, so I've always had this affinity for technology. And I used to dream about wanting to have a career in tech because I knew that they had a lot of perks. They paid well. And I knew that having a job like that would completely change the trajectory of my life. And so there I was in prison. I'm getting close to my release date. And I cast a vision. I set a vision for myself. And I started thinking about, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? And I wrote it down, because, when you write down your goals, you're like 30% more likely to achieve them. And so I wrote down what I wanted to do. I literally have my journal, and it's so crazy, going back and reading it. But I wrote, I want to work at a big tech company like Google. It was originally Google. Okay. Yeah, but Microsoft was fine.
Right. Yeah. It's the same.
So, but here's the thing: is like, okay, I want to work in tech. How am I going to achieve it? Because here I am with no college degree. Now I've got this criminal record. But so when I get out of prison, I have a whole new outlook on life, a whole new confidence within myself. And I was operating on a really high frequency at that point. And so I enroll myself in a school. I figure, you know what? The only way I think I'm getting into one of these big tech companies is to go get my bachelor's degree. And then once I graduate 4 years from now, I can achieve this dream. And that was really my path. That was what I anticipated. But I guess God had another plan for me, because he brought the opportunity to me a lot sooner than I would even have expected. So I'm sitting, or I'm not sitting, I'm at the halfway house. It's the morning time. I go downstairs to get a cup of coffee. The news is on, and there's a reporter, and I happen to come down at the exact moment that the reporter was talking about this program in San Francisco called Code Tenderloin. And she said, if you are from an underserved community and you want to break into tech, Code Tenderloin can help you do that. They're helping people with criminal records, people who are homeless, break into, some of the world's biggest tech companies. And I was like, what? Like, I can't make this shit up, dude.
Right.
And I was like, no way. Like, so I beelined it to the TV, and I finished, watching the rest of the whatever the news reporter was saying about Code Tenderloin. We were allowed cell phones at this halfway house, which I was like, what the hell?
No, we allowed cell phone in the halfway house as well, but depends on what type of cell phones, on depending on what type of halfway house.
Yeah, but they didn't let me have cell phones in the North Dakota halfway house. So I was like, when I got to San Francisco, I was like, hell yeah, I get a cell phone.
Right.
So I look up Code Tenderloin. I go to their website. I sign up for the next cohort. I think it started in like 2 or 3 weeks. Next thing you know, I'm in the program, and they're helping me learn how to write a resume. They're helping me learn how to interview. And so, but the other thing they do that's really important is they take you on a tech tour, because you're in San Francisco and you're in a tech hub. They take you around to the various tech companies because they have strong relationships built up with them. And you get to go in and hang out with the employees that work there and develop relationships and network. And it was really cool. Can you hear that noise in the background? No? Oh, we're good? Okay, good. Yeah. My grandma's got the water going, so I wasn't sure if it was picking up.
That's all
right. So, so I went to like Twitter, I went to Microsoft, I went to Google, I went to NerdWallet, LinkedIn. I mean, it was really cool getting to go into all these different tech companies. And so one of the places we visited was the Microsoft store. And while we were there, the employee that was talking with us told me that they were applying and that I should apply. So, so I did. I used the resume that Code Tenderloin helped me write. And then within like 2 or 3 days, they called me back for an interview. And I was literally out of prison, maybe a couple months. Like, I was shitting my pants. Like, it was like,
Well,
oh my God, I got an interview.
Microsoft just gave me an interview. What?
I know. So Code Tenderloin helped me prepare for the interview. So I did a ton of mock interviews. I, prepared for every possible kind of interview question I thought possible. And then by the time I went in for the interview, the in-person interview, I was so prepared. Like, I nailed it, dude. I did so well that after the interview, she offered me the job. And I was like, are you serious?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I done got a gig of Microsoft.
I know. And even though it was the retail store, I knew, I was like, this, at the end of the day, it's still Microsoft. You know what I mean? Like, I have a Shelley at Microsoft email, right? And I'm just like, this is, if I do well in the retail store, I could like work my way into corporate, man. And then I'll be making 6 figures. So that was my whole mindset, right? And so, and then she offers me the job, but then she tells me I have to do a background check. And the job offer is contingent upon the background check passing. And I was like, oh my God, dude. Because I knew it was going to pop up. And I knew that there was a very high percent that it was going to ruin this opportunity. And so I came clean. I told her, I said, listen, I need to tell you something. I just got out of prison a couple months ago. It's not the person that I am today, but I just wanted to come clean with you because you said that the background check, I have to do a background check, and I'm pretty sure it's going to pop up. And she goes, oh yeah, just, I don't know what to say about that. Just all I can tell you is be honest about it, because if you lie, then you definitely won't get the job.
Right.
And so so I left the meeting or the interview, and I mean, I was on cloud nine. Even though I knew I had to do this background check, I still just got the job offer from Microsoft.
Right.
Oh yeah. So I go back to the halfway house, and I'm posting it on social media. I'm telling everybody, I'm running, I'm everybody I come into contact with, I got the job at Microsoft, you guys, then I get the email to fill out the background check. And so I was honest. I filled everything out and waited for the results. And God, it must have been about a month. And during this time, I started looking on the internet just to see if I could find a news article or a blog or something where, it talked about the fact that Microsoft had hired people with criminal records before, but nothing. There was nothing. I mean, in fact, it said the opposite, that they don't hire people with criminal convictions. But I was like, okay, at this point, it's really in God's hands, so we'll see what happens. So I get the email, and the results were back, and it was flagged. And they gave me 3 to 5 days to respond as to why it was flagged. And so for me, I thought, oh, okay, so they want to hear like they want context, like they want to know what happened. Like this could be my chance to tell them my part of the story instead of them just looking at this background check, right? That there's more to the story than that. And so so I talked a little bit about what I did wrong and the environment I grew up in and how I became an addict. But then I talked about how I had turned my life around, and then how I had done all this rehabilitative work. And so all of the programs that I completed while I was incarcerated, I had all the certificates. So that was like my proof, right? So I scanned them all to my cloud drive. I attached them to my letter, and I hit send, and I prayed and prayed for a miracle. And I was just hoping that they would see me for who I was, right? And not my drug charge. And unfortunately, they ended up coming back and rescinding my job offer. And what's ironic is during this time, before the background check results came back, before they rescinded my job offer, you have to do all the onboarding at this time, right? So you're filling out all the paperwork, you're choosing your medical insurance, all this stuff, right? Well, one of the emails that they sent me, at the very bottom of the email, it said, if you have a criminal record and you've been discriminated against, contact the Fair Chance Ordinance. And then I had a link to their website. So I clicked on the link. First of all, I'm like, what is this? What is this I'm reading? This is crazy, right? So I click on the link, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I was like, is this for real? It was just like too good to be true. Like I'd never heard of this law, right? And apparently San Francisco is the one that started this law. It's in about 14 other cities. Yeah.
I remember you was telling me about it when I first heard you talking about it. Man, I ain't never heard nothing like that.
Yeah. Yep. And so I even told my dad about it. I was like, Dad, have you ever heard of this law? He's like, man, that law's not real. He's like,
it don't sound real.
He's like, yeah, there's a law that's going to make a company hire you. He's like, I don't think so, girl. Like, forget about it. And so after they rescinded my job offer, I contacted them just to see. I mean, I really didn't know what to expect at that point. But I knew,
you're going to try to figure,
I'm going to see that. Like, let's see if this really is something, right? And so I contact the Fair Chance Ordinance, and she asked me what company had discriminated against me. And when I told her Microsoft, she told me they'd never fought a company that big. And there was a chance that we may not win. She said, we're just a local, we're a very small ordinance, in San Francisco. Technically they don't have to, hire you. If they don't, they'll have a fine, but it's not like anything major, right?
Right.
But she said, if you're ready though for this fight, I'm willing to go to bat for you. She's like, but I just want to let you know what you're up against. And I was like, and this is where that came into play, like what Defy taught me about self-limiting beliefs and fear and how to challenge it. This is where that really came into play for me. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what, let's do it. I said, what do I have to lose? Because I know that if I don't, I'm always going to be left with what if for the rest of my life. And I was not willing to do that. Right. I didn't want to. Yeah. So let's do it. Let's see if we can make Microsoft hire me.
Right. Might as well try.
Yeah. So, I go toe to toe with one of the biggest tech companies in the world. And it was scary. It was a roller coaster of emotions. They came back, they're like, what? We never heard of this ordinance. What do you mean? We have to give her a fair chance. And so it's funny because the people in San Francisco, like their HR department there, knew about the law, and it's by law they have to attach that to their email. They have to let people know it's available to them. But the ironic thing is they never told headquarters about it. And guess where my background check went? Washington. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I was the first person to ever leverage this law. So they were shocked, to say the least, right? What do you mean? Like, there's a special law that protects her. We don't want to hire her. What if she relapses? What if we can't trust her? She can't be around our customers' information. Right. And I get it. Like, I'm not mad at Microsoft for thinking that way, because most companies do, but it's just because that's the way our society is. It's been ingrained in us to think that way. People don't know what they don't know. And people working at Microsoft are no different, right?
But if you didn't have that resilience and then that kind of that fight in you, for the average person, they probably wouldn't even notice that in the email, for one.
Yeah.
And then the average person coming out of prison, they probably would have just gave up as soon as they
100%. Yeah. And so Microsoft was pissed. They were like, we never heard of this law. And, they tried to give every reason why they didn't want to hire me. And the Fair Chance Ordinance lady was like, listen, we have these laws in place for a reason, and they're to protect people. We want people who are reentering society to be contributing members. And, we don't want barriers placed upon them. And we have this law in place that, for a reason. And just because you're Microsoft doesn't mean that you don't need to abide by these laws. And they realized that there was nothing they could do about it. Didn't mean they were happy about it, but it is what it is, right? So they said, okay, fine. We'll go ahead and, give you the job, but the original position you applied for has been filled. But don't worry, we have another position open. But you're up against 2 other applicants now for the interview. So good luck. And I was like, are you kidding me? I got to re-interview again. And now I have competition. Like, this is just their way to legally not hire me. They're going to say that somebody more qualified interviewed. They're going to say that somebody better, interviewed better than me. And I was just like, oh, I was sick to my stomach. And that was another moment where I'm like, Shelley, you got to do this. Just do it. Just jump through the hoop. So I prepared for the second interview. I went into that interview. I was in my head. I let fear get the best of me. And I did not do well in that interview. I was nervous. I was scared. The same girl that interviewed me the first time, who loved me, was not that same demeanor. And so I left that interview just feeling defeated. Just, well, Didn't get that job. I was so freaking sure I didn't get the job, man. I was, mentally and physically exhausted from the roller coaster ride. I went straight to back to the halfway house, crawled into my bunk bed, and just fell asleep. And it was like noon. I slept all the way until the next morning. Woke up the next morning, started to process the reality of the situation, and said, "All right, well, I'll just continue going to school, and in 4 years, I'll try again." And then it was like 2 days later, I get a call, and my phone rings, and it's Microsoft on my caller ID. I'm like, what the hell is Microsoft calling me for? Like, I just bombed that interview. I ain't getting that job. And it's the recruiter offering me the job. I freaking lost my shit. What? Right. No way. Like she started laughing because she's like, I've never had such an amazing response before. Like, thank you. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you're offering me the job. Yes, I'll take the job. I'll accept it. Yes. I get off the phone with her. She's like, great, I'll send you all the information, right? I get off the phone with her, and I'm running down the hallway, just yelling, you guys, because we all lived in this big halfway house with so it was like an old hotel, and right. So I'm running down the hallway yelling, I got the job. I run downstairs, I see the staff, I'm like, you guys, I got the job. And everyone's like cheering and clapping, and oh man, it was like one of the best feelings of my life, dude. I could not believe I had just broken past that barrier. People say, oh, that's luck, or, but no, that wasn't. That was divine intervention. That was supernatural, the way all of that played out. Right. And you can't tell me there's a higher, being in this world, because right. And it was my destiny. I was meant to get that job, and so I started working there. I'll never forget the first day. And I walked into that retail store. I was the opener, and I got to meet the team, and I'm wearing my Microsoft shirt with my Microsoft badge, and I'm just feeling like $1 million, man. Like, woo-hoo! I'm all proud of it, walking right. in, just feeling like I'm in a movie. So incredibly grateful. And so that was my whole attitude there. Now, the other thing that came into play for me that I had to challenge was, great, now I made Microsoft hire me, and I'm going to be retaliated against in some way, shape, or form. And when people find out that I'm been to prison, I'm going to be treated differently. And so, but then I told myself, okay, that could be a reality. That could happen. But I'm not going to worry about it. And I'll cross that bridge when we get there. And if they do treat me like shit and they're mean to me and retaliate, I'm going to kill them with kindness.
Right.
And so I had a great career at Microsoft. I was there for 8 years. I achieved my dream of breaking into corporate. And I ended up becoming a B2B sales rep in corporate. I remember I got my job offer, and it was for $104,000 a year. And I was like, what? Yeah. Yeah. And so then I started doing, B2B sales, and didn't know what the hell I was doing. I actually started in a different role. So I came over to corporate as a Surface TSP, which stands for Technology Solutions Professional. And so I worked alongside the sales rep. So I was their go-to technical person to help overcome any technical challenges that may arise during the sales cycle. And I was in that role for about 3 months. Then the company reorged and decided all of the Surface TSPs were going to become B2B sellers. And I was like, oh my God. And my dad had just died. I was out on bereavement. I can't make this shit up. I'm out on bereavement for my father's sudden passing because he relapsed. Mm-hmm. And I get a call. Oh, hey, by the way, you're not is my manager. She's like, you're not working on my team anymore. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you're a B2B sales rep now for Surface. And I was like, what?
Wow.
Oh my God. And I just remember being so scared and just wanting to run away because I didn't know anything about B2B sales, right? And I was like, how am I going to do B2B sales? Like, I've never done this. I literally just got out of prison like less than 2 years ago. Like it was intense. And then I kept thinking, you know what my dad would want me to do this. Like, I won't know unless I try. So I reached out to every top sales rep at Microsoft and asked them to mentor me, and they did. And I eventually got it. And in a couple of years later, I ended up becoming their #1 computer sales rep in the world. And I won a very prestigious Gold Club award, which, if you think about like Gold Club, less than 2% of Microsoft's employees ever win this. And here I was being selected for this. You know, they take you and your spouse on an all paid, vacation. They took us to Mexico, and it was just wonderful. And I couldn't believe I had achieved this. And not only that, but beyond, my personal success, the impact that it's made with the company is incredible, because I was a case study basically, right? And so Microsoft ended up changing their hiring policies, and they became a fair chance employer, and they joined the Second Chance Business Coalition. And they also went public with PBS NewsHour about my story. And it's just incredible to see all of this that's happened, right? And I think back to that moment when I was dealing with the fear and the limiting beliefs, because I could have said, no, this is too much, and walked away.
So let's get into the winner circle
Yes,
while we still have a few minutes left. We don't want to not talk about the winner circle, right? So get into the winner circle and what it represents and what it's about.
So the winner circle, because I talk about the losing loop, and obviously my last name being Winner, it just made sense to call it the winner circle. And so it's that transition from being in a limited, stuck mindset to being empowered and free. And that's by doing that is through self-development, personal development. So my course, my program starts with the first phase is mindset, right? And we really focus on the things that really hold people back, because I'll tell you what, you got the right mindset, you're the most free person in the world. Even when I was incarcerated, because my mindset had been drastically changed, I was more free than I'd ever been in my entire life. So mindset is really the most important thing. You got to deal with the mindset, because the way you think, your thoughts become your reality. And we've got to deal with that stinking thinking, that negative mindset. So we focus on that. We do a bunch of modules that teach you a different way to think and a different way to be, that help rewire your brain. We then move on to phase 3, where we talk about financial literacy, nutrition, meditation. We teach different concepts, right? We also teach the importance of networking. You are who you hang out with. All kinds of courses, right? And then the final module, which for those
I think you got.
Yeah, I mean, who better than to teach the incarcerated community about rehabilitation and sales than somebody who rehabilitated themselves and rose to the top to be Microsoft's top salesperson in the world for computers. And it just, I was like, okay, well, here, I've got this crazy story. I've got this blueprint and this plan on this path for them to achieve this success. Then I'm going to do it. I'm going to create this program. And so I did. And I don't know, I just want more people to break free from the losing loop. I really do. And if I can do it, they can too. Anybody can. They just have to be taught the skills and the tools. And who better to give it to them than somebody who is credible, somebody who's lived it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, you can go to my website, winnercircleus.com, winners with an S. You can learn a little bit more about my program. Me and my co-founder, Heath. He's amazing. Honored to be doing this work with him. And, we're always looking for connections. We're looking to expand the program into other prisons. We're looking for donations, any of that.
Right. So I got one final question, and this is a question I ask everybody who's been on my podcast.
Yeah.
If you have one word to describe your journey, what would that one word be, and why?
Transformation, for sure. Because the success I've been able to achieve, just all of it, is equated to the mindset that I have. And I didn't get here overnight. It was a journey, but I was willing to put in the work. And people say, oh, people can't change. People can most definitely change. That's why it's called the rewiring of your brain. You can literally rewire your brain and your neurons. And I was able to do it. And so transformation, for sure. All about it.
Transformation, and there it is. I want to say thank you for the work that you're doing. Thanks for I guess I can't say thank you. I need to say thanks, Stephen, for the introduction.
Yeah.
But thank you for being willing to open to collaborate, partner up, get to learn more about the reentry space, the programs, being more involved. And I also want to say thank you for the work that you're doing. Because your story, man, who would have thought that somebody can walk out of prison and become the top sales first of all, get hired at Microsoft for one, but
right.
Then become the top of sales at Microsoft, and then take all of that knowledge and turn it into a program, and not just a program, but truly outside of the name, a winner circle. So I want to say thank you for making the transformation. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I look forward to doing more projects with you, partnering up. Man, I'm really looking forward to it. Just continue being you.
You too, Cardell.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
For those of you all tuned in, we appreciate you all tuning in. I'm leaving the link to where you can go and find out more about the Winner Circle. Also learn more. If you want to connect, if you want to reach out, you want to link up for the institutions that's watching, I highly recommend that you bring this program to your institution as well. Just want to say thank you for everybody tuning in. Thank you for everybody that I met at the conference. This is another episode of the Reentry Journey. And you know what I say to the guys that's tuning in that's going to be seeing this, to the women that's tuning in that's going to be seeing this, always remember, don't let the limitations of your background reduce the height of your potential. This is the Reentry Journey. I am your host, Cardell Sims. This is our guest, Shelley Winner, and we will see y'all when we see you. Thanks for tuning in to the Reentry Journey.
From darkness to light, from confinement to freedom, this is the Reentry Journey podcast with your host, Cardell Sims, bringing you the powerful stories of those who have walked through prison gates and built meaningful lives beyond them. These aren't just stories of survival. They're testimonies of transformation, second chances, and the human capacity for change. Join us as we explore the challenges, triumphs, and lessons learned on the Reentry Journey.